Have you ever realized you weren't always the hero in your own story? As Christian writers, we love a good redemption story. But what happens when we have to face those moments in our lives when we were prideful, immature, and just acting out of our own brokenness? In today's video, we're talking about how to embrace the full truth of your story, both the heroic moments and the hard ones. Hey, y'all, welcome to today's Live with Lisa. If you're new here, my name is Lisa, and I create videos that help you learn how to write and live God's way. If you want to honor God with both your life and your writing, this is the place for you. Every week, we go live in partnership with Our Given Purpose Ministries, which is an incredible ministry founded by my dear friend, Tori Slaughter, to help you grow in your walk with God and to get plugged into godly community. So not only can you watch today's live stream on Instagram and on YouTube, but also on the Our Given Purpose Ministries Facebook page as well. So make sure you learn more about that amazing ministry today. So, as I said, we are talking about just how to really embrace our full story. And that can be intimidating and scary for a lot of writers. It can be so hard for us to really recognize all of the parts of our story. We may have some parts that we think are pretty good and parts that we are okay with talking about, but there may be other parts that we're having trouble really digging into. We're having trouble really finding that truth that we've lived and finding those parts of our story that we need to write about and finding the right way to express that. And so today I want to give you really just some feedback and some ideas for writing exercises that I think will help you to begin to draw out those lessons in your story and to begin to really embrace it and understand what it is that you've been through. So we're going to challenge you a little bit today. These exercises are not for the faint of heart, but I believe it is worth it for you to go through them and to really start to extract those lessons from your story. I think it will surprise and in some cases even move and challenge you. And so let's dive right in. The first exercise is to ask yourself and write about what are the top 3 to 5 failures I've experienced in my life. What are the top 3 to 5 failures that I've experienced in my life? And what does that really mean? What does that look like for me? Many of us learn from the failures that we've experienced. It can be challenging for us to really endure that and really experience that. But it can be hard for us to recognize those failures that we're dealing with. But you know, our successes feel good. We want to talk about those, right? We want to highlight the good things in our lives. We don't necessarily want to talk about our failures. We tend to shy away from them. We tend to feel like, they're maybe embarrassing for us or hard for us to talk about, but our failures tend to be the areas where we grow the most. They are the things in our lives that really shape our character and push us to grow. And God so often uses our failures and our disappointments, the areas in our life where we struggle, to really bring him incredible glory. He is able to work through us in the midst of our failures and disappointments and mistakes that we've made to really show his goodness in our lives. And so we want to tackle that. We want to really be brave and to dive into writing about those moments in our lives that we may not be all that proud of. Now, be aware that you don't have to share everything that you write about, right? This is just really for the purpose of brainstorming. So you don't need to, if you're writing about some things that you may choose to cut later, that's okay. But this is a time where you really want to just get all of your ideas out. So I want to encourage you to dig in and really look into those moments of those mistakes and those disappointments and things that may not have been your best moments, because again, those tend to be the moments where we really learn and grow and develop as people. All right, let's go into the comments here. Let's see. Okay, Tori says, oh, that is so good. Exposing the failure so we can walk in truth. Yes, absolutely, Tori. And that's exactly what it means. When we embrace every part of our story, the good, the bad, and the ugly, we are able to really walk in confidence and know that, first of all, God accepts us for all of who we are, right? We're able to acknowledge what we've done with Him. We're able to acknowledge what we've been through, the mistakes that we've made with Him as we go through this process. And we recognize that we are completely loved and accepted by Him for who we are. And that is such a gift that He gives us in accepting us and loving us. And we are able to walk in that confidence and boldness, knowing that we are loved and accepted by Him. All right. And Tori says, yes, God uses our failures to bring Him glory. Let's get vulnerable and dig in for God. Yes. And I love that. Exactly. That's really what it's about. We want to have those moments of vulnerability with the Lord. Again, we're doing this on our own. We're not sharing everything that we write down because we're brainstorming. But yes, absolutely. And so when we acknowledge how God has worked in our lives and used our failures for His glory, we have that moment of redemption that we get to experience in our lives. And that is so important that we do that. Amen. The next question I want you to ask yourself and really dig in and write about honestly is, what are the top 3 to 5 successes you've experienced in your life? This is obviously the opposite side of that first question. We want to dig in and talk about our failures, but we also want to dig in and explore our successes as well. And why is that? Well, we learn a lot from our failures and we can learn from our successes too. But one thing that's really key about the things in our life that have gone well is our successes give hope to our readers, and they give hope to us that things can get better. When we have when we're writing about our failures and our mistakes and our disappointments, that can be challenging. It can be hard for us to walk through those moments. But our successes and our triumphs really allow us to recognize that there is hope on the other side, even of the difficult things that we've been through, that there is goodness that has come out of it, and that God has been faithful through everything that we have been through. And so it shows us, when we write about our successes, it shows us that the way things may be, even right now, is not the way that they always have to be, right? Life is full of change, and God allows us to go through good moments and not so good moments. And we need to understand that even in the difficult and challenging moments, that we don't have to stay there. We don't have to stay stuck in those hard moments, but we also have triumphs in our life as well that we can point to and see how God's hand was at work there and how He brought us out of those difficult situations. So I want to encourage you to really dig in and look for those bright moments, those moments of triumph and victory in your life as well, because they are there. And I believe that as you really take the time to pray and reflect doing this exercise, that the Lord will bring up those moments for you in your life that may not have even felt like a victory in the moment, but it was actually a moment of triumph for you, where He showed Himself faithful. He proved Himself to be faithful to you. And I believe you'll be surprised by those moments that He brings up in your life. Also, our successes prove that we have learned from our failures over time. Many times we will have successes, and those successes will come after the failures and the disappointments that we've experienced. And so we get to realize and recognize that our successes are signs that we have grown and we have learned, like we talked about earlier. So that is something to celebrate. I also want to point out that I did a live stream a while ago talking about really defining what kingdom writing is. And one of the points that I made in that live stream was that kingdom writing always inspires hope. We live a very hope-filled life as followers of Jesus. And so our writing should reflect that hope that we have in Jesus. And so when we are creating, we are writing, and we are producing work for the glory of God, we want to make sure that there is an element of hope in our writing, because that is the hope that we have. And so I want to encourage you to go back and check out that live stream, because that will really give you insight about what are the different elements of kingdom writing. What does that really look like practically? So make sure you check out that live stream and watch that. All right. And then the next question I have for you is, who are the 3 to 5 people who have had the greatest impact on your life? Who are the 3 to 5 people who have had the greatest impact on your life? This can be good or not so good. People who have had a great impact on your life, or maybe a little bit more of a negative impact. We want to acknowledge both. And the reason why is that we all have people in our lives that have impacted us and shaped our lives, either for good or bad, either for positive or negative ways. And so what you choose to write about those people depends on a lot of different factors. We're not going to go into all of that today, and you may not include all of these people for sure in your story. Again, that depends on a lot of different things, but it's important that you acknowledge them, at least to yourself, to recognize the people in your life that did have different impacts and different things that you could learn from in your story, even if some of those lessons were painful. It's important to walk through that and recognize who each of those people in your life mean to you, what they mean to you and what they represent to you. Because in many ways, I believe God has different lessons and different things he wants to teach us through our relationships, through the different people that we have met and interacted with over the course of our lives. And so a lot of times when we go through this process of recognizing these different people in our lives that have deeply impacted us, it allows our story to make more sense. It allows us to see the bigger picture and to pull back and get a different perspective about how truly God can work all things together for our good. And again, we get to see, in many cases, the faithfulness of God over the course of our lives. So I want to encourage you to think about that exercise and really kind of work through how these different people in your life may have impacted you. All right. The next question that you want to ask yourself as you're going through this process, again, we are exploring the lessons in our lives as writers. We are exploring how the different things that we've learned from our story and from our journey. And so we want to walk through all of those different things. And so the next question I have for you to work on is, if someone wanted to make a movie about your life, what kind of movie would it be and why? If someone wanted to make a movie about your life, what kind of movie would it be and why? I love this question because I think it encourages us to look at our book from a different perspective, and really from more of a commercial perspective. Here's why. There is a reason why movies tend to be much shorter than books. If we were to take a book, let's say a book that's 300 or 400 pages, and translate all of that into a movie, it would probably be a 7-8 hour movie, right? If we were to take every word and every bit of description and put that all into a movie, the movie would be extremely long, and most of us would not want to watch it, right? And why is that? Because there are so many things that we're able to do in books that look different in movies. It's a different medium, a different form of expression. And so we have to, a lot of times when books are adapted to become movies, they have to take a lot of the book out, right? I know many of you have probably experienced that, where you saw a movie that was adapted from a book that you read, and you read the book and then you saw the movie and you're like, oh, they took out this scene and that scene and those scenes over there, and that whole character is missing, right? And why is that? Because the medium of a book is different. And so it doesn't allow for you to just come directly translate it from one medium into another. And so we have to look at that and understand there's value in that in terms of thinking about our books and our stories. We have to, when we think about our book as a movie, it forces us to drill down and think about the most relatable aspects of our story. What is it that we believe people are really going to gravitate to? What is the core of our story? What is it that we can think about, and what genre does it really lend itself to? Is it more of a love story? Maybe the story of how you met your spouse, and just kind of how God worked and brought the two of you together. Is it a more of an adventure, right, where you're going on you have all these different experiences and meeting different people and learning different things about yourself, right? Would it fit more in terms of that? Is it more of a contemplative story where it's a little bit slower moving, but there's these really deep and grounded and moving moments in your story, and it's maybe more serious in tone, but there's these moments where you really are able to be a little bit more philosophical, right? Different types of movies have different goals for your audience. And so sometimes when we think of our book in a different way and we think outside the box a little bit about it, it allows us to really focus and hone in on those really relatable aspects of our story and to cut some of the parts of the story that may not be as relatable. Our stories are very important to us, right? We're very protective of them because we lived it. We walked through it. But it's important for us to understand that every part of our story is not going to be interesting to our readers. Every part of our story is not going to be fascinating for them and really pull them in and draw them in. And so we need to understand that and recognize that, we need to focus. And so thinking about your book in the form of a movie can help you do that. It can help you identify what are the parts of your story that are the most compelling, that are the most relatable for your readers, where they will want to go along with you for the journey. And then as you start writing your story, you can kind of focus in more on those parts and really it gives you a good overarching picture of what kind of story you're telling. All right, let's go to comments again. So Tori says, you are one of my great impact people, and I am grateful. I love this thought process and how each person has influenced our view of ourselves and God. Well, thank you so much, Tori. And I am so honored by that. You are one of my great impact people as well. And so I'm so thankful for you and just your encouragement and just how God is working through your life. So thank you so much for that. That blesses me. And I'm grateful for this process as well. I pray that this is a blessing to a lot of people to be able to walk through this process and really see how God has just blessed us in different ways through the people in our lives. Absolutely. And then Tori says, woo, the movie version of my life. I thought about who would play the movie version of me, but not the actual scene by scene composition. Wow. Yeah, I love that. I love that, Tori. I think many of us have thought about who might play us in a movie of our lives, right? So I think that's such a fun thing to think about. But yes, the scene by scene composition is really key as well. Again, it allows us to pull back and think about the big picture, the overarching picture of our lives. And so it just gives us a different way of approaching it, a different framework. And so I'm glad that that was encouraging for you and really kind of stretched you a little bit in terms of how to think about that. I hope that that did that for everyone watching. All right. And then the last question that I want you to think about, this one's definitely going to challenge you quite a bit. And so take your time with it. Don't rush. But this last one is to write a letter to your 10-year-old self, describing how your life is now. Now, I want to caution you with this because this particular activity can bring up some really intense emotions, particularly if you had a really painful or traumatic childhood. And so I want to acknowledge that and be sensitive to that. If that's you, or even if it's not you, I really want to strongly encourage you to walk through this type of activity with a therapist or a good counselor who can help you really navigate the emotions that may come up. You may actually, even if you haven't had a really painful and difficult childhood in some ways, there may be some things that you weren't expecting that affected you more than you thought. And so this is where therapy and counseling can be really helpful in terms of helping you walk through those different emotions that may come up. I would also say for several of the other questions as well, you can certainly, I would encourage you to do those with a therapist as well. And because you just never know what kinds of emotions might come up as you're going through this process of exploring your life, exploring the lessons in your life. Sometimes there is trauma there that we weren't even aware of. Sometimes there is brokenness and pain and even some grudges that we might be dealing with. And so we have to walk through that process. And it's really helpful to do that with someone who is a trained professional, someone that you feel safe with, and someone who can really lead and guide you by the Holy Spirit and with, the Lord just kind of directing that process. So I'm a big, advocate for counseling, particularly Christian counseling, and just really wanting to walk through that process with that training and with that safety. So definitely an important thing to do and to consider in this process. So I want to encourage you as we close out today that this process, again, might stretch you and challenge you in a different ways. But I want to encourage you to go through it anyway, even if you're experiencing some of that, even if it's a little challenging for you and you are walking through that and you might not want to explore some of those parts of your story. But the key is so much of our story is really important for us to understand and for us to learn from and grow from. And we don't gain anything by burying it and by hiding from those memories that we don't want to face. And many times the Lord wants us to heal from those parts of our story that we don't want to look at, that we don't want to face. He is calling us to deal with them. And even if we don't publish our stories publicly, He still wants to deal with them privately and on a personal level. And so if you are looking to share your story and to write your story and to publish it with the world, this is, I believe, an essential part of that process. Looking at your story, walking through your life, thinking about the different things that you've been through and the lessons that you can learn from them, and really allowing the Lord to work in you and to heal you in those areas that need to be healed. So don't run away from this process. Don't shy away from it, because there is so much healing and freedom and just health and growth and deliverance that I believe that the Lord wants to bring to you through this process. All right. And Tori says, this was indeed a necessary topic, and thank you for your obedience. Well, I thank God for that, Tori. Thank you so much. And I hope that it is a blessing to everyone who sees it and is able to really walk through these exercises. I pray that it encourages you and that it blesses you and helps you on your writing journey. So if this video was helpful for you and you want to learn more about how to write and live God's way, make sure you subscribe and follow. I go live every week here on Live with Lisa with lessons and tips and advice to help you write and live God's way. So that is it for this week's Live with Lisa, and I will see you next week in the next one. Until next time, take care, God bless, and happy writing, y'all.